There's massive underreporting based on the current standards that we are seeing right now. OSHA, we have 31,600 workers who suffered heat-related illness between 2011 and 2019. And an additional 20,000 heat-related workplace injuries each year in California alone that are not accounted for each year. And a lot of people think that just providing fluids is going to 100% protect someone from having a heat-related illness, and that's not the truth. You can be 100% hydrated or have plenty of fluids, clear urine, and I could still drive you to heat stroke in about 20 to 30 minutes, especially if you're wearing PPE or firefighting gear or biochemical clothing or anything of that nature. If I essentially suffer your abilities or restrict your abilities to use sweating and to evaporate heat, you'll become very hot very, very quickly, and we can be in a life or death situation in a matter of minutes. We know that we can help to prevent it. We know how to treat it. We're doing better jobs in the military and athletics than we are in the laborer's setting. And the laborer setting, really without arguing whatsoever, has more heat-related issues. Indoor work is often misunderstood, and people don't realize how hot it can actually be. Forging facilities, manufacturing plants, you name it, it can get pretty darn hot next to some of these massive machines, not to mention noise and chemical and other things that many industrial hygienists and others are looking at. But that impact of that heat on that individual's productivity, on their health and well-being, is something that we need to have a greater focus on. So there's a lot of heat stress prevention strategies that we'll want to implement here, and the biggest one, honestly, is heat exposure. We have been using Kestrel devices for a very long time, not because they're our corporate partners, because we stand by the accuracy and the validity of the product and what it's able to do, and the fact that you can measure WBGT on site is critical to the safety of the athlete, the laborer, and the warfighter. Wet bulb globe temperature is a very challenging term. It is not heat index. It is a type of heat index, but it is hard for people to comprehend because the units don't match what you feel and we feel as hot. So a 90-degree WBGT is cancellation of activities for most northern and mid-Atlantic states. Right? Southern at 92 degrees WBGT, they start to cancel these events. But you say that to someone in occupational setting, they're like, oh, 90? That's not bad. I work in 90 degrees all the time. It's like, no. It can be very hot, very humid, and you could be dealing with a lot of other things. So what is that environment like? We try to make sure that we are creating environmental work-to-rest ratios and modifications based on that specific activity or job that those people are doing. People don't understand that their sweat rates are different, right? Like you might sweat a liter, okay? I sweat 3 liters per hour when I exercise, playing my sports and running, okay? I can't consume 3 liters in an hour. My stomach won't allow me to. But if I know that, I know I have to make sure I'm well hydrated before I even start my activity and be protective, as well as continue to consume as much as I can while I'm exercising. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach to hydration. The gold standard in a heat stroke situation is whole body cooling, but then we have things that are also industrial, different controls like air conditioning. We have extremity cooling, we have fans, we have vests that can be provided to different work situations depending on what they need to wear over their body. There's different evaporative cooling towels and things of that nature, such as missions towels and missions line of products, which we've looked at as well. Ice slurry ingestion and water dousing. These are all ways that we can help to mitigate some of the heat stress that someone is experiencing. And in different settings, it may dictate what can be used and what can't be used, depending on what they're required to wear or what they have access to.
So we wanted to look at the heat stress mitigation strategies and how that influences productivity and thermoregulatory responses during work in the heat. And so this was kind of the first study of its kind where we added layer after layer to look at how each individual layer might influence some of these things. And so here we started with the extreme, just absolutely no sort of protections, just the radiant sun, and then from each experimental trial we added a different layer of protection to try and look at how every single layer might add to some of those mitigation strategies. So we added hydration, we added shade, we added cooling, other different types of cooling techniques within here, and you can see kind of how that worked. We actually have radiant heat lamps in our lab, which is great, helps us look at solar radiation. They are here too, not quite the same. So we had that and we're able to influence and kind of play around with how these different controls and not controls may influence heat mitigation strategies. We kind of did a secondary study that just looked at cooling versus no cooling, same kind of setup here. So again, in this study, we had our participants do a treadmill walk and the box lift, but this time they just put on full body cooling products. So they had the sun sleeves on, they had a hat on, they had a neck gaiter, and then they actually had cooling during some of their breaks in between the activities. And then the trial that did not have any body cooling had them in long sleeve hat, overalls, and so on and so forth. And so, again, not surprisingly, body cooling had a huge influence on some of these physiological factors that we look at. So we found significantly lower core temperature and also heart rate with cooling compared to no cooling at all. Also similarly with productivity, there was actually more boxes that were able to be lifted in the cooling trial compared to the control. And then when we looked at the end, we actually had our participants and timed them to see how long it would take them to do 25 repetitions of this box lifting activity. And with that, we found they were actually 20 seconds faster in the in the cool compared to the control.